Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the September Solar Session. I'm Jonathan Bonadio, Senior Policy Advisor at Solar Power Europe, and today I will have the pleasure to accompany you through a journey from Brussels, from the European Parliament, to cities, communities, and municipal authorities around the thrilling topic of jobs for solar energy, and also how to make sure that the transition happens at local level. Because as you know, we have a set of directives, of law, of regulations here in Brussels, but the transition will happen at local level. And here to discuss about this topic, I have the pleasure to welcome today Mrs. MEP Benedetta Scuderi from the European Parliament, Florine Serrault from FEDARENE, and Adrian Hiel from Energy Cities. So, jobs and cities. What are we talking about? You know that the solar sector has been booming recently. We have right now more than 260 gigawatts of solar panels, which translates into the equivalent of one panel per inhabitant in Europe, one panel per citizens. We will need to reach at least 3 times this figure by 2030. It's a big challenge ahead of us. In 6 years, we'll have to multiply the installation by 3. And to install these panels, we will need people. We will need skills. We will need new, trained, and competent people for this transition. We currently have 800,000 workers working for solar energy in Europe. So this is a huge challenge, but also an opportunity to provide quality jobs for our workers in Europe. So I want to talk first about jobs in the energy transition. And I wanted to ask you questions, to all of you the same questions. A very short question to start. What are the first 3 words that come to your mind when talking about jobs in renewables and in the solar sector? I will leave the floor to Mrs. Scuderi here.
I'm not sure I'm going to be so short, but I'll try. So first thing is the social return on investment. So for the same amount of money that you invest in solar and renewable energy, you have exponentially much more jobs than you would have if you invest in fossil fuel, for example. So it's a huge social return on investments when you talk about jobs. The second one is the skill gap. So we really need to fill that gap. At the moment, we have a lot of jobs and we don't have enough competent people, and this is something that we need to work on the European level to be sure that that gap is filled. And the third one, the fair jobs. So we have a very big opportunity to provide new jobs. We need to learn from the past and we need to make them fair pay. This is already happening on the renewable sector, but we need to be sure that this keeps happening and the job market is open to all different group of people, also the most discriminated ones, and to keep that in mind when we are going to fill the jobs gap.
Thanks
so
indeed,
3 words. I would say it first, youth empowerment. Well, that's already 2 words, but first topic, because we can see that youth, they act as multipliers of uptake in their communities, and the greater engagement of youth in the renewable sector, it could have great acceleration of the effort in the energy transition. Existing EU initiatives such as the International Clean Energy Challenge and also the Genesis platform, they are already demonstrating the innovation power that youth can bring to the transition, and also their willingness to involve in sustainable jobs. And also youth empowerment and sustainable jobs, well, definitely sustainable jobs can be an answer to the youth unemployment. So there is a big work to do on this at first. And second word, I would say local energy communities. There are very interesting models that can enable a lot of things in the transition. At first, it enabled the local consumption and reduce energy transport, and it's also counteracting what we observe as the NIMBY phenomena, and it's really triggering social acceptance and democratic processes as well in the implementation and enabling the project, sustainable projects at the local level. And then I would say as a third word, well, skilling, training, reskilling, and capacity building. We can observe that thanks to continuing rolling out of existing EU initiatives, such as Manage Energy or the Covenant of Mayors Europe, there are a lot of training and capacity building programs that are really upskilling the staff at the local level. So yeah, that would be my three main words.
Thanks indeed, Florine. And actually, I'm very happy because when we talk about jobs, I mean, we often, I mean, also in our sector, the solar sector, we say, oh, we really need job. We have a skills gap. We have to fill the gap. So quite like difficulties, challenges we have. And both of you express a lot of optimism as well with the youth, with quality job, with the job intensity that the solar sector can bring, with involving local communities, reinforcing public acceptance. So it's actually good news as well that we have this need for job, because it can also provide also hope for the young generation and for all people which are on the job market right now. So thanks indeed, and I hope that that Adrian will continue on this positive mindset.
Absolutely. Solar in cities is hugely positive. There's no question. And it's positive not for what it does in itself, generating clean electricity, but what it allows cities to do. So my three words, one would be small business. Right? We can help small businesses be more competitive by lowering their business costs. Right? That helps cities stay vibrant and keeps jobs local. Poverty, right? Energy poverty is a real thing that has a big impact on the way cities are run and how cities feel. Cities can use solar energy to help address that energy poverty, and by doing that, they help a whole range of other social issues at the same time. It's not a cure-all by any stretch, but it's an important tool in dealing with some of the more marginalized people in our cities. And three is communications, because it's the communications and the outreach and the coordination that cities have to do, so that we're not just building solar for the sake of building solar, but we're building solar to bring around social benefits for our cities to make them better places to live. And those are the kind of skills that we're focused on, because it's very hard for cities to hire those people and justify the salary outlay. But that's what we need in order to get the social benefits that solar makes possible.
No, that's clear. Thanks indeed. And indeed, the social dimension of the energy transition is very important, often forgotten. So thanks indeed for reminding us of this. So we had a discussion about cities. We have been into the local level. Now back to Brussels, back to the Parliament. Mrs. Scuderi, you are a member of both employment and ITRE committees. Very concrete question. What would be your priorities in terms of green jobs for the next mandate?
Thank you. So for me, I wanted to be the member of both committees because I think they're extremely interconnected. We need, that in this mandate, we're going to work a lot on the clean industrial deal, which will mean abating hard to abate sectors, but also means thinking about sectors that are strategic for our transition, for the energy transition, that we need to produce the technology and the infrastructure that are essential for us to be really independent and to make this energy transition, to make it clean, to make it fair, to make it good for people and environment, but also to create more jobs. So if we manage to attract to Europe and to build in Europe all the industry that we need for doing the transition, like I'm thinking producing solar panels, producing energy storage technologies, all of this, that also means new jobs. So for me, the priority will be to couple this industrial transition with a skill transition, and that's why I wanted to be in both sectors. And in the ample committee, I really think we need to. I mean, the Commission has been doing a lot about skills. Last year was the year of skills, and we know that we need to keep doing this kind of work, but we need to really focus it on what kind of skills we need. And thinking who are the people that are currently out of job. So women, young people, marginalized people, racialized people, people with migration backgrounds. How do we get them on board? We have a shortage, all the birth rate issues that we have in Europe, but we also have a lot of people that really want to come to Europe. How do we integrate them in the job market? How are we sure that they, can learn the language, they can learn the skills, they can integrate in a diverse and fair job market? And how are we sure that the people that are like middle-aged and they don't have to lose their job, they don't lose their job? Because that's also an issue. We cannot just think about people that are outside the job. So how do we make this transition fair in terms of industry? How do we reindustrialize our countries, but especially the skills transition? How do we make it accessible to everyone? I think there's a lot of ways that Europe can do that. We can work on the legal level. We need a lot of funding. We need a lot of new directives that are going into this direction. But we really need to bear in mind that what we need is to get rid of barrier access to these new jobs and to really provide good trainings, considering the intersectional layer of discrimination that people already have to enter the job market. This needs to be in our mind, and needs to be in our mind when we think about an industrial transition, because that's not worth it to have an industrial transition if then the job market stays the one it is now. We also need to change that.
Thanks indeed for this comprehensive reply. And I mean, indeed, like you mentioned, the necessity to connect industrial policy and jobs policy and to foster job as a way for social integration, further social integration. And I think this is actually pivotal. We are also working on this under the Net Zero Academy, the Solar Academies, which are also there to bring this quality job for the people who are not always the first call for the job market. If you allow me, I want to ask you a spontaneous question. Because we talk about job, and you know that President von der Leyen has put forward the proposal to create a union of skills and to reinforce vocational educational training in her political agenda, in her political guidelines. How do you perceive this initiative, if I may ask?
I think this is a good initiative. I think on the job, on the skill side and jobs level, there were a lot of interesting inputs from in the guidelines also of President von der Leyen. And I really think we need to look into vocational job. In the Ample committee the other day, there was like one proposal, like one question to the head of cabinet. It was I don't remember from what group, but it was like, why don't we have vocational job training in the institutions? Because the training are only for like extremely qualified people, people with degrees and stuff. Why don't we have vocational if we believe that vocational jobs are important? Because they are. And another company was like, yeah, no thought about that. That's a good point. It wasn't our point, but I think it was another political group, but that was great. So we need to focus more on vocational. We definitely do, because vocational jobs, first, we really need them. And second, they are also a lower barrier of access, so they can really increase integration. But we also need to focus on how people from a discriminated background can get to high level, like more educated level jobs, because that's also like so cutting barrier of access to education, for example, decreasing the cost. The housing crisis also like something that gets into that, because people cannot afford to study anymore because they cannot afford the house, they cannot afford the fees. So these are things that we need to look into, and I really think that the unions of skills going towards the vocational jobs is a very good step forward, but I'm very scared that will stay only at the European level. A lot of these initiatives, like the year of that, the union of that, they stay on the European level and they never get to the suburbs. They never get to the very remote areas of Europe where they are most needed. So what we really need to do in this mandate and always is try to get Europe where it's needed and not let it lie in Brussels. That's definitely something we need to do and should be one of our priority for the years to come.
Thanks indeed. And connecting Brussels to local communities, local authorities, actually the reason why we are here today, and also I guess our main task that awaits us for the next mandate. So indeed, back to this local level, I wanted to ask you a question, Adrian. Concrete figure: 214,000 new staff members would be necessary in local authorities to tackle the energy transition in buildings. Yeah, it's I think 3 full-time equivalent per municipality on average. What are the key priorities for these local authorities, and how could Brussels help them tackle this?
Well, I would hope that the key priorities in local authorities are the exact same that they are here in Brussels, which is implementing the Green Deal, because ultimately it will happen in cities or it won't happen. So the 214,000 figure, yeah, that's just for decarbonizing buildings in Europe. Now, when you add on the electricity market, when you add on mobility, when you add on biodiversity, waste, cities are facing a massive skills shortage, and they desperately need help from the EU level, both directly and from the EU level, putting pressure on member states to help out local authorities. So one thing that can definitely be done is freeing up funds for long-term employment. We want good jobs in cities. We want these people to be there for several years to learn and grow. Right? Cities need help developing HR strategies so they're actually competitive places to work. There's a lot of cities that really, really struggle because they can't compete with the private sector. So we need to help them up their game, become more digitalized themselves so that they're a compelling, dynamic place to work. And finally, we need to change the way we finance our cities and the way we calculate that money, because right now a lot of investments in the energy transition, and we had some great examples from Italy, we've had them for years, where mayors have wanted to upgrade street lighting to LEDs. It's a no-brainer of a decision. It saves tons of money right off the top. But if you borrow to do that, that counts against the GDP debt ratio of the country, because it's government debt, it's local government, but still government debt. So you can't borrow to put in investments that pay back in no time at all. And solar falls into the same camp of being a no regrets short-term investment. But if they can't borrow to invest, we're not going to move as quickly as we need to.
No, but thanks. A very important and very tangible, concrete point. I mean, on the necessity for investment, but also necessity maybe to adapt some rules, detailed rules. And I'm turning to Mrs. Scuderi here. How can we, building on what Adrian just said, how can we reconnect European matters and local urban matters? Should we expect a budget, an MFF, a multi-annual financial framework that delivers also at local level? Is it something that you see as achievable for the next mandate?
I hope so. Well, I'm from the Greens. It's like think global, act local. So, of course, I want to act local. I hoped that would happen. I mean, that would also help us, to go over a lot of corruption issues that we have with some member states. So that would also be a great solution for some things, because there's some municipalities, there's some cities that have a very big drive for transition, and they don't get the money because they're blocked into government, they're blocked into regions, and it's extremely complicated. But on the other side, you also have cities that get the European funding from the region or the state, and then they use them in a very horrible way. I've just come from this town next to Milan, and they are using the European funding in a way that should not be using them. So when you put the money on the local level, it's also harder to monitor how the money are used. So these are for me, there's a very positive side of being able to act on local level, because there's no one like a mayor and a council, a board, and the local government that knows what that community needs. But at the same time, first you're gonna fund much more bigger cities, and then all the suburbs, all the remote areas are gonna be left behind a little bit. And on the other side, it's much harder to monitor the money because you have them much more disseminated. So I really think we need to find a way to get Europe closer to the local level, still being able to monitor this money, still being able to give them to smaller towns, smaller cities, smaller village as well. They also have a transition, but we need to find these structures, because as you were saying, like cities need investment. Like I am very close to the city of Milan and the local government there, and they're struggling so much. They really want to make a transition, but like they're struggling. They don't have money for like public transport. They don't have money to do all the infrastructure they need to renovate and to go into a more efficient grid, for example. And this is making it impossible to do a good transition, because it also depends on the kind of country and regulation you have and the debt you can do or not. So I really hope that in the next MFF we can find a way to finance local projects, to monitor this money, and to allow local governments to develop, because one of the first developments should start in our cities. I mean, our cities are like very energy requiring, but they are also like one of the places where we can produce a lot of energy. We can produce even like food. We can completely rethink about the way we are looking at our city, but they need the money. So I don't have an answer. For me, I hope that will happen, but I also see the challenges, and I think before we approve the multi-annual financial budget, we need to think about these challenges and how we want to overcome them, because it is essential to start this stricter collaboration between Europe and local levels.
Thanks for your answer, very comprehensive as well. And what we see, I believe, for the next MFF and how at Solar Power Europe we also perceive it, is to reinforce step by step the conditionality, making sure that the money contributes actively to our targets, to our Fit for 55, to our REPowerEU targets. Because what we see right now, I mean, in the past MFF, is that you have government that invests very good into public transport with a certain amount, and with the rest they invest into fossil gas or they invest into gas networks. And this is also something that we need to see, to take a holistic approach towards European funding. So it's very important to recall this. Florine, a question for you now. So FEDARENE, you represent the local energy agencies. How could the regional energy agencies support the need for staff in the energy transition? What would be your key asks as Federation of Energy Agencies to EU policymakers?
Yes, so local and regional energy agencies, they are delegated bodies to the regional and local authorities to implement the energy and climate policies. So basically, when it comes to local jobs, there are as such a pool of a sustainable local job, as they do hire qualified staff to implement and work on the energy transition and climate policies implementation. There are also two different projects, mostly EU projects. They provide capacity buildings and trainings, and not only to their internal staff, but mostly to staff in the local industries and local regional governments and authorities. So they do act also as skill providers of capacity building and trainings on specific topics related to sustainability and energy transition implementation. They are supporting also the local leadership through the implementation of the energy communities, and the development of the local communities around sustainable projects and energy transition projects. So yeah, I would say as a key ask to the EU level, well, it's a bit joining what has been said already in the discussion around the MFF and the reinforcement of the link between the EU level and the local level. Basically, energy agencies, they need the support of the EU level on their missions. They do run a lot with EU fundings and EU projects. They are training providers. They are key facilitators of the different actors on the territories, and thus, yeah, they need support in the rollout of the energy transition also mostly through supporting the energy communities. The EU program, the existing EU programs such as the EU Life CET, the Horizon Europe, the Elena fundings, they showed already proven success in helping the activities of the energy agencies. And they are showing the way on how the EU fundings can effectively leverage the investment and support regions, cities, and the local communities. Therefore, yeah, it contributes to support local and regional agencies and authorities in their missions of implementing a fair and rapid energy transition. So I think it's really important that we can keep running these key programs that are also providing a direct link between the EU level and the more local and regional level when it comes to implementing the energy transition.
So thanks, Florine, and thanks also for highlighting the role, the pivotal role of energy agencies as a link between local and regional and EU level. I gotta ask less questions for MEP Scuderi. It's not Christmas yet, but it's Christmas weather. So if you had a Christmas wish list for initiatives to reinforce the energy transition at local level for cities, if you can send this list to the Commission, what would it be?
Monitor the programs and the plans that they have, like the green grid action plan and the all the renewable energy directive 3, where there's a lot on, for example, harmonizing and decreasing the bureaucracy for approving of renewable energy community, for example, and to fasten up the processes and bureaucratic and administrative processes for creating different citizen energy initiatives. So that's definitely something we need to monitor, because I mean, we know, especially in renewable energy communities, our member states haven't been great at all. Like since renewable energy directive first and then the second, like, even having a common understanding of what it was and how to create one was super hard. And that's why then we have to legislate again on the topic to be like, okay, really do it. What are you waiting? And I hope now they have all the means and they will really start doing it, because renewable energy communities are so key. You were talking about that, are so key for having a completely different approach to energy in cities, and then will also allow us to democratize and decentralize much more energy. Then I really hope that we can start thinking about cutting the middle person, cutting the middle agent, so to give the benefit to the communities that have renewable energies. So that would be key from the Commission to work on, because at the moment the local communities having the plans and then the benefits are not there. They absolutely not all them, not even like the biggest percentage. Like it's usually like big energy companies that gain most of the benefits, and then you have NIMBYs, and you have a lot of no, we don't want this kind of development. This is something that we need to work on in cities. And then I really hope, as I was talking about grid, we need investment on the grid. We need to have a better grid, a more capable, like in terms of reception and power installation of the grid. We need a more efficient and digital grid. We can do any kind of development in renewables and flexibility if the grid is the way it is. And we need more infrastructures. We cannot think cities can go to the electric mobility if we don't have the right infrastructures. We really need to provide funding and support, and this is extremely on the Commission to provide this kind of support, and for us to monitor the Commission. So for me, the three key areas would be energy citizens initiative to be sure that member states are allowing them, and to support communities and citizens to have their own energy, cutting off middle agent, and try to give most of the benefit to the communities that have the renewable energies, and do a lot of so democratizing also the energy sector, and do a lot of investment on the grid and infrastructure. Cities need that so much.
Thanks a lot. And this will actually close our debate discussion. I still have two elements in mind from what you said. Implementation. The good news is that we have already a lot of texts right now. We have the Renewable Energy Directive with Article 22 on renewable energy communities. We have the solar strategy, which says one community for each municipality above 10,000 inhabitants. We have the market design with energy sharing. So as you mentioned, monitoring and implementing will be key. I mean, if we manage to do it, we already have a big piece of cake here. So I think it's very important. And then, of course, reinforcing the grid and making sure that the transition could happen through integration, system integration. So with this, we'd like to conclude our discussion. Thanks indeed for following us, and see you for next episodes. Thanks. Bye-bye.